Dr. Joe here at Atlas Health, and today I'm sharing part two of the how autoimmune paleo and ketogenic diet can actually make you worse, or any other restricted diet can make you worse over time. And I just want to start out by giving a little perspective, or idea about where my perspective is coming from. And so I've been in clinical practice for 15 years, and I actually recommend autoimmune paleo diet daily, if not weekly, for sure. Weekly, maybe even daily. I often recommend a FODMAP diet for people that I see. I often recommend, I really love a ketogenic diet, I think. So before all of you, just hang on for a second. Now, before all you blow your stacks about what an idiot I am, because obviously autoimmune paleo really worked for you, or ketogenic helped you lose 30 pounds, and look at all the literature suggesting how awesome these diets are. Just remember that I'm not saying at all that these diets are bad. What I'm saying is there are a number of people that do these diets and actually feel worse. And there are a number of people out there that are considering doing these diets, that are researching it because they have a health crisis and they're wondering if it will work for them. And I love that people are out there doing their own research. But I sit in my office every day and I talk to somebody who had a crappy reaction to some sort of diet that they tried because they read a book and didn't have any sort of actual individual assessment, or somebody who has lost just about every food but 3 foods, and they're asking me, what can I eat? And I tell them the story of oral tolerance. And if you missed the video on oral tolerance, check us out on our Facebook page. Oral tolerance is part 1 of this whole thing. And without exception, when I share with them the story of oral tolerance and how we address it and how we can help them get their food back, they say, Doc, I wish I would have known this sooner. So here's the deal. I answered that question so many times, and the rest of my staff, that we're making videos now so that people can have access to this information before they get really sick. So that's where I'm coming from. Okay, so my goal in this video is to list a few factors that one might consider to help remediate oral tolerance. Now, unless I was the Micro Machines man and I could speak at that rate, I don't think I'm going to be able to get through in a constructive way all that information. So my goal is to make a list today and make a series of videos that will spend a little bit of time, more time on each topic, and as questions come up, spend more time answering those questions. And then at the very end of today, my goal is to provide a list of foods that a person could actually eat. And by the way, I have not examined you. I have not done any labs on you. I have not looked at any forms. I have no idea what your medical history is, what your personal health history is, what your social history is. I don't know what's worked for you in the past, what hasn't worked. I don't know what medications you're taking. I don't know what sort of autoimmunity you're dealing with or infectious disease that you have. So the question that I can't answer for you specifically is, what can I eat, doctor? I just don't know without that information. And the whole point of the first video is to say that if I go out and just recommend a blanket diet for everybody, and they have a loss of oral tolerance, and then they do that diet based on my recommendation, and they end up worse for the wear, it's completely unethical and irresponsible. So I don't do that. Okay. So back to the original discussion of oral tolerance. We know that a loss of oral tolerance is really the underlying mechanism that causes food sensitivities. A loss of chemical tolerance is the underlying mechanism that causes sensitivity to things that you smell, or chemicals, or dry cleaning stuff, or cigarette smoke, right? And loss of tolerance to things like pollens and molds in the environment might be an allergy, right? That's loss of tolerance to that. And loss of tolerance to yourself is called autoimmunity. Okay, so oral tolerance, and a number of people are commenting on research. Just go to PubMed and type in oral tolerance, and type in oral tolerance and autoimmunity, and you'll see the connection between what happens in our small intestine and autoimmunity. So again, just a brief summary, food goes into the small intestine, from the stomach, and because the stomach was inefficient for various reasons, which we'll get into in later videos, the protein is now chunks of protein instead of individual amino acids. And there's a section of immune system cells called the gut-associated lymphatic tissue that hangs around the small intestine in this little area called Peyer's patches. And they decide whether or not these foods that are not amino acids now, which our body can't really use, food, we need to break it down into amino acids, are either something that we want in our body, which is a thumbs up, not creating inflammation, or a thumbs down, creating more inflammation. Okay? And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that mechanism later on, specifically the connection between the liver and the other lymph cells in the body, or the lymph glands, etc. But for now, it's to say that those cells really decide what happens with oral tolerance, or they're one of the key players. Okay? So when a person changes their diet and they've restricted foods, and if there are other factors that are causing oral tolerance to be still lost, then after a honeymoon phase, they will start reacting to the new food. And the new food will create the same symptoms as the old food. So like the person that's eating like pizza and getting like nasty gas, diarrhea, bloating, fatigue, headaches, migraines, etc., allergy symptoms, insomnia, now all of a sudden gets off pizza and other gluten-containing foods, or they do an autoimmune paleo diet, for example, and they feel amazing. They lose weight, they lose bloat, they get their libido back, they're feeling awesome, and then after like an inordinate period of time of that, all of a sudden they eat farm-raised eggs with organic kale that was massaged with extra virgin olive oil that wasn't heated, and mixed with other organic vegetables, and now all of a sudden they get the exact same response. And they're like, okay, what do I do now? And then they go back to original foods, because no matter what they eat, they start feeling like crap, and they have a worse reaction to the original foods, and then they're like, now what do I do? That's what this video is really talking about, and I want you to know that we're going to get into later on how to look for early signs of that. Okay, but what I want to do today is go back to the list. Okay, so here's the list. To remediate oral tolerance, we need to know a little bit about what's going on at the stomach. We need to know why there may be inefficient digestion at the stomach. Okay, so we need to know those factors related to hormones that affect the stomach. We need to know factors of the brain and how it affects the stomach. We need to know something about food combining and how it affects the stomach. And we need to do something about infectious disease, for example. Okay, we need to know things about metabolic and other immune issues. And we're going to spend a lot of time on the stomach later on. Once the food goes into the stomach, we need to understand what's waiting for it, okay? And so does this person have a pancreatic issue where they're not releasing pancreatic enzymes? Do they have a gallbladder issue where they're not releasing gallbladder juices, bile, to absorb fat? Because I can tell you, if you're going to do the keto diet and you have a gallbladder problem, you will suffer mightily. It's just going to be a horrible experience for you, okay? Now, if you look at what's going on in the small intestine, there's supposed to be stuff that lives in there. Bacteria, okay? And are there enough good bacteria? Do we need to know a lot about the microbiome? And are there too many bad bacteria, or yeast like Candida, or is there a parasite, or is there good bacteria but there's just too many of them? What's the integrity of the lining of the intestine? That meaning, are the cells that are supposed to glue the small intestine cells together and keep undigested material from getting into the lymph tissue, are those barriers intact? We need to know something about that. We need to know something about the microvilli, which are these little finger-like projections from the small intestine, cells that face the lumen of the intestine that absorb food. Are they actually working? Because a person that takes digestive enzymes to help them with hydrochloric acid and stomach secretions and make the protein break down,